All right. Hey, welcome back to the Go for CO channel. This is John the Bomb. Building others means business. And boy, does it mean to build others by actually being a phenomenal coach, sharing services, doing things that think differently in the marketplace. And it could be for the individual or the entrepreneur. But this gentleman, you're going to be in for a treat today. He talks about learn how the most profitable business owners in the world use counterintuitive thinking to earn more money while working less. What the heck? All right, Mr. Michael Maziarek from Full Circle Coaching. How are you today? And thanks for coming on the Go for CO channel.
I'm doing very well, John. Thank you. Thank you. How are you?
Awesome, awesome. Well, hey, I'm excited to have you on. I know that we've interacted a few times offline, and we just made this opportunity to get together here and make some time. And I think people are going to get a ton of value. I was impressed by some of the tools that you use to really indicate ways that you can kind of help these small business owners because it's always interesting, right? An entrepreneur and a business owner initially takes on all the hats. I'm in operations, I'm in sales, I'm in marketing, I'm in distribution, I'm in supply channel. So you obviously don't become Amazon or some big company without starting to learn all the hats. But then eventually you get into tools and things and operations that hopefully probably match right what you're going to share with us today, the full circle coaching side of how do you work less and still become more profitable and all that stuff. So what was the idea first to this coaching platform and how you started it? And then we'll go from there.
Well, the idea came from basically looking at trying to differentiate the approach, not anything to do with the results. The results still want to be to help a business grow in revenue and profit and therefore in valuation, because at some point, all these business owners are looking to exit the business at some point. And so the valuation aspect of it becomes important also. Really trying to come up with a way to differentiate, an effective way to differentiate myself and generate the results in all three areas, revenue, profits, and valuation, is really was the motivation for it. In terms of the ideal audience or client for this, um, I focus mainly on small to mid-sized businesses. And I've had a great deal of experience in terms of working with that demographic of business, because earlier in my career, and actually in my entire career, I've had some extensive experience with the franchise model. Earlier in my career, I took a franchise concept that ultimately became known as Deck the Walls, picture frames, artwork, and framing services. I took that from startup to a little over 250 stores in 6 years. And along the way, really got to know, because the franchise owners that I was able to attract as far as this business to believe in my vision for it, um, I got to know the small to mid-sized business person, what their concerns are, what their experiences are, but more importantly, what the emotions connected with those experiences were. And I think, therefore, I've been able to make a connection that a lot of people really haven't been able to make with that demographic of clientele. Excuse me. As I said, my my main focus in terms of creating Full Circle was to take a little different approach than perhaps other consultants do. Specifically, as what most consultants do in terms of the way they work with clients, they will pick one or two aspects of the client's business and try to make a dramatic increase in one or two areas. For instance, they might just focus on lead development, or they might just focus upon uniform or not on unique selling proposition for the business. What my approach is there are 12 areas that are common to every small to mid-size, actually any business, whether it be small to mid-size or Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies. There are 12 areas that are potential areas of improvement. And my approach with clients is to look and investigate all 12 of these areas. And by the way, this is agnostic of product, service, or industry that a client might happen to be in. But look at all 12 areas of the business and try to make a small increase instead of a 10 or 15% increase in one or two. I try to make anywhere from a 1 to 5% increase in as many of the 12, ideally all of the 12 as I possibly can. What this does is it takes advantage of the compound it takes advantage of the benefits of compounding. If you make smaller increases in a number, your base for the second one is larger than the base of the first one, and the base of the third one is larger than the base of the second one. Kind of the difference between simple interest and compounding interest in terms of the financial world. And that is primarily the approach and the differentiation that I like to think I have versus other consultants as well.
Interesting. So, these 12 areas obviously developed through different times of your life and understanding the business world. And like you said, the franchisees that you worked with to develop those people. And it's interesting, right? I always say when we say small to medium-sized business, I think instinctively human beings think, oh, well, like the mom and pop place, right? That's what a small to medium-sized business. But in America, they quantify it 0 to 10 million is small, 10 million to a billion is medium, right? And so it's pretty interesting. It's a wide gap of how big these businesses have, and my day to day as a commercial banker, I typically deal with companies between 5 and 150 million. And it's interesting, where the points are that they start to change the strategy that they're approaching with, right? So I'd love to understand. So, okay, you take this concept, right? You want to be different in the coaching space. You take the 12 components of a business that you feel are most impactful. And instead of making one place in that 12 components, 15% difference, you take 12 places and add 3%, 3%, 3%. So that's 36%. But you say it's a force multiplier when you take that third one into after you did the first and second one, it's actually way greater than that. So give us some examples of how you started to framework the business, because some people may be sitting out there going, oh, I think like Michael, I think that there's 12 places, but did you use already some formulas that were in the marketplace? Are you using some tools? How did you start to put the business together so that you could approach the marketplace as that full circle coach?
Okay, well, it's a very good question. Essentially, one of the major motivations for looking to take this approach is the fact that in that demographic that you so eloquently described in terms of volume level, one of the realities for people operating businesses within those parameters is that these people tend to be very, very good at working in their business. Okay, they are, if they got the pizza shop, they have the best pizza in town. They know exactly the ingredients, the right recipes, and so forth. What what need did I fill for those folks is to get them and convince them that it's equally as important as working in their business to work on their business. Okay. And to take it out of what I would call the tactical side of things, how do I make the pizzas? How do I provide the best services as far as my clients are concerned? And get it down to and take a look at where am I currently with the business? Where do I need to go with the business? Okay. And to develop and through my coaching, the skills that they need to be able to accomplish that as their business grows. what winds up happening, and what my experience over 40 years has been, John, is that people, when they, as their business grows, what people find is that they find themselves doing less and less of what they got into business to do. They find themselves less and less getting involved in terms of making that best pizza, okay? And they get more involved in terms of, and don't have the skill set oftentimes to be able to get involved in um, really, as the business grows, realizing number one, that they can't do everything that they did when they first started the business because the volume is just too great for them to handle, and that they have to develop other skills like management skills, like leadership skills, et cetera, in terms of being able to do that. The other service that I think I provide to people is that one of the things that, in terms of working on their business, and because they work so seriously in their business and takes up most of their time, is that one of the things that they I find that they have lacking is the ability to look innovatively at their business. Okay. Um, I like to call it, they get wrapped up in an environment of givens. The givens are that we do things this way because we've always done them that way, or we do things this way because the industry does them that way. Okay. That really flies in the face of and inhibits innovation as far as their business is concerned, which is extremely important when it comes down to creating a differentiation for their business that is going to resonate with their potential clients versus everyone else that's in the space that they're in right now. So, in terms of developing these 12 areas, one of the things that I have developed again over the years has been a software tool that I can use in terms of investigating each one of the 12 areas in detail with a client and identify what areas are potentials for improvement for them and to what degree we can expect improvement. Of the 12 you mentioned, John, by the way, in terms of just illustrating the effect and the benefit of this compounding, um, if I were able to make a 1.3% increase in all 12 of a particular client's business, and we were successful in terms of identifying what areas there were and being able to accomplish a 1.3% increase in all 12, whatever the net profit of that business was when we started, when we finished making the 1.3% improvements in all 12, whatever that net profit number would be double what it was when we started. Okay.
Wow.
That's just the way the math works. Okay. But it works not just the math, it works in reality. That's what winds up happening. So, but anyway, this software program that I developed really systematically goes through all 12 areas, identifies not only identifies what the improvement areas are, but there's a coaching module as part of that software that really, once we identify, and I'll give you one example of one of these 12 areas, is creating a market dominating position for someone. That goes along the lines of what I just mentioned in terms of looking at innovatively at that client's business and trying to differentiate them from everybody else in their space. Okay, as far as market dominating position is concerned, in going through and investigating that, not only can we identify what kind of improvements we can make and set a goal for doing that, but there's a whole coaching model that for that client will list all the tasks that are necessary in terms of accomplishing that. And the coaching that I do with them is basically reviewing the tasks and the performance and execution of those tasks to be able to make sure it happens. Because I've seen it happen in again in my experience in business where people come up with great plans, Okay, and people identify opportunity areas, they come up with a great plan to accomplish them. But what winds up happening is they don't execute. And if they don't execute, they don't get the results. So they can't be astonished that it doesn't happen if they're not executing it. And what I help do is hold them accountable for the execution of those tasks as well.
I love it. There's certainly ways that you start thinking, right? Once you get into business and you have that entrepreneur spirit, start to developing things. And, I just had a lady on earlier today and, she developed a tequila business out of some inspiration and some heartache in her life. And, if you take the 12 components, right, she needed to find out like, hey, what's the distribution like? What's the manufacturing like? What's the just scheduling of how do you do tasting, all that type of stuff. So really interesting stuff and how you put that together. And obviously the coaching business has become more and more competitive. You have ex or former CEOs and former C-suite people and former entrepreneurs or even just guys like me, right, in the commercial banking that we know finance really well, like set up shop as a consultant flag, but I was really intrigued by those 12 components and the things. So let's develop a little bit more conversation on, all right, what are the 12 components? If you can detail those for us. And then also when you're going through the process with being introduced to a new potential client, what are the steps that you're taking so that you're obviously, again, you yourself differentiating in the coaching world?
Okay, well, first of all, as far as the 12 steps, I can from memory I can remember most of them, but not all of them. Okay. But the first and foremost that I wind up doing with every single client that I wind up helping is what I mentioned before, the creating a market dominating position, because that is extremely important. Um, Creating a differentiation and getting them to think innovatively. One quick example before I go on with that topic is I'll give you an example of this breaking out of this environment of givens. I was working on a consulting project. It wasn't taking this approach necessarily, but it also indicates the importance of getting out of that environment of givens. I did a consulting project for Beltone Electronics, the hearing aid people. They were creating another channel of distribution for themselves. Okay, and what they decided to do, besides their brick and mortar dealer stores, is within the markets that they had dealers, they were also establishing hearing aid centers in, at the time, Sears Roebuck stores. Okay, and going into the Sears Roebuck stores and establishing a hearing center within those stores, they were basically operating them the same way they did their brick and mortar stores. The industry says that for hearing aid centers, the normal hours are Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. Okay. Well,
Hmm.
in a meeting that we had with the Sears folks, I asked them a magic question. I said, can you tell me what percentage of the week's business you do every day? And lo and behold, Friday and Saturday were 35% of Sears's business for the week. Okay. And Friday and Saturday, the way the dealers initially operated those stores, they had no presence in the stores Friday and Saturday, or Saturday and Sunday rather. We made that change in terms of them having someone there, not necessarily to do hearing tests that day, but to schedule hearing tests for a day during the next week. And the first week that we implemented that across the store, the hearing centers at Sears, we had a 20% increase in business just that fast. That's kind of what I'm talking about as far as the innovation is concerned. Okay. Going back to what I mentioned, as far as the 12 areas, some of the 12 areas some are pretty obviously opportunities to cut costs, market dominating position, unique selling proposition, um, uh, upselling and downselling, um, establishing joint ventures or relationships with folks that basically deal with the same type of client or same demographic client that you do. And again, I don't remember the rest of them, but those are our primary ones that almost in every case we wind up finding opportunity areas in terms of finding an opportunity to improve.
I love it. You know, the tweak that you made with Beltone and obviously that partnership with Sears Roebuck was is innovative, like you said. Like it's just thinking outside the box, thinking, okay, within the components of success that you're already having, Sears, why is the relationship that you have, you know, determined by these certain hours when they could be positioning themselves in this box of area and all of a sudden 20% lift from there, which is pretty darn cool. And then obviously, like you described, these even these first 6 or 7 components, right? They're very detailed about you know how you could affect every industry. It could be an automotive dealership to a dental practice. Those 6 areas plus the full 12 really make a deep impact. So tell us, I guess, from a coaching perspective, you know, you have this career that you have in the franchising space. You learn so much. You build out this program of these 12 components. You build a software to do that. What are some of the tools or ways that you then started implementing to go into the marketplace? Like, what were your strategies to market yourself to start getting clientele to now think of you as this new brand, which is the full coaching services?
Okay. Well, primarily one of the things that I did early on in terms of having established Full Circle, and by the way, that Full Circle Consulting was established in 2011. So this is the 14th year that we're in business. You know, from the start, I saw LinkedIn as a very important tool. Okay. And in terms of not only um, building the number of first level connections, which I have some ridiculous number like 20,000 first level connections on LinkedIn right now. I also saw the benefit of becoming part of groups such as retail executives, such as Chicago CEOs, and joining those groups because I got access as a result of joining those groups to people who may or may not have been in that 20,000 first level connections of mine. So, you know, that I felt was important. And when I launched Full Circle, I was able to capitalize on that. Back 14 years ago, I didn't have 20,000, but I saw the ability to be able to touch and to get my message out to that many people using LinkedIn. Networking is a big opportunity as well. John, that's where you and I met, the networking in Naperville initially. But getting to know people and being able to not only interact with them as with LinkedIn, you know, digitally, but be able to actually meet people in person and talk to them in person, I think is an important thing. The way I normally work with people, I have a website, which is fullcirclecoachingservices.com. And you read a little bit of it at the intro of this thing in terms of what my homepage says. But there's basically a button or a link to click on the homepage of my website that says access our free training. And I do truly mean it's free. There's not, you know, nobody has to leave a credit card or subsequently, you know, have it for a limited period of time. But if they click on access our free training, what winds up happening if they provide their name and their email address, they start to receive weekly emails from me on different topics, business topics, in terms of these areas of improvement. They have the opportunity at any point to unsubscribe if they don't feel they're relevant or helpful to them. But it's a way, you know, people say there's nothing for free. Well, this is for free. Okay. If people find an interest in that, there's a second a second link on my website to be able to schedule an appointment. And basically, that's a 45-minute Zoom call that I will schedule with someone that's complimentary. And I will actually show them on the Zoom call, on that 45-minute Zoom call, I will actually show them the software tool that I use. And we will be able to, for their particular business, go through at least 2 or 3 of the 12 elements and see what difference that could make in terms of what their current performance levels are. And then typically what winds up happening if someone is interested in exploring all 12 of them, I will schedule 2 subsequent Zoom calls to be able to cover the rest of them. Those other 2 Zoom calls that I schedule with them, I charge $1,000 to basically go through all 12 of them. And that's the 2 2-hour Zoom calls that follow the complimentary one. If they decide to engage me at that point, they not only get access to my coaching services in terms of helping them execute what we've talked about as far as opportunity areas, but they also have access to an e-learning center that's 24/7, 365 days a year, whose content matches or in some cases exceeds some MBA programs that colleges provide in terms of subject matter. So I think people get a lot in terms of service and in terms of education and knowledge, in terms of working with me, as well as being able to benefit from some of the experiences I've had with other clients, like the Sears thing that we talked about.
No, that's interesting. And yeah, starting to put a format together, when you started out and put it to a level where now you have that freemium scenario where someone can take value out of that free opportunity, and then discover that, hey, from that 45-minute call can take 2 or 3 of the components of the 12. But if you think about it from a bundling perspective, right, 12 can turn into 4 bundles of 3, or 3 bundles of 4, or 2 bundles of 6, right? There's so many creative
Yeah.
ways that you can really develop this, and people can take that like, hey, I think this bundle is kind of where I'm struggling with. Maybe these other 3 or 4, I'm good with, or 6. So it's really an interesting way. And when you give choices, people don't feel stuck like, hey, you can only help me with this, so I'm going to have to go somewhere else for something else. It seems like with your full circle coaching, you could really develop a real long lasting relationship. What's the time frame that typical clients stay with you over the longevity of their interaction with you?
Well, excuse me, normally, in terms of what we are able to identify, and by the way, on that 45-minute Zoom call, I will mention to you that I have never had a 45-minute complimentary Zoom call with someone where I haven't found at least $10,000 worth of unrealized revenue for them. Or in some cases, a couple of cases, I found as much as $50,000 or $60,000 worth of unrealized revenue for them. Okay, so I mean, and that's the freebie in terms of where it is. In terms of the typical client and identifying what we are able to identify in terms of the 12 areas, what I'd like to see is at least a year, 12 months commitment of their time and an engagement of 12 months to be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish with them. I think that's reasonable. I think part of the software also that I demonstrate to them will show them based on what I typically look at as far as compensation for my coaching services, is it compares and shows what the ROI is in comparison what their cost is for working with me and engaging me. Okay. A lot of times, and that's the problem, John, that I find with a lot of businesses, period, is that they look at things and they classify them as profit and loss expense items when they really need to look at them as balance sheet investment items that anticipate a return. Okay. So my coaching services should not be looked at simply as a cost of business on the P&L. It should be looked at in terms of what that's doing to the revenue, profits, and valuation of the business as far as an ROI on that investment.
Yeah, I mean that's the way it should be. You know, a lot of people don't realize, right? Investing in yourself could be a book, could be a seminar, could be a coach. These are all investments with true ROI if you also take action with it, right?
Right.
We've all gone to many seminars sometimes, and I'm to blame. I always say in my book that there's some times that I've gone and done nothing, but when I developed the 4A formula as an example in the book, it talked about assess, align, accountability, and then I took action. And on the ones that I actually took those three and took action, it became a force multiplier. So super exciting stuff there. So Mike, when we think about the next level of things and how you're doing things differently, what's that lasting impact that you want to share from a perspective of, you're moving businesses to the next level, you're doing a force multiplier on their bottom line that takes them to another level of maybe selling in the future, like you talked about exiting. A lot of these people that don't know how to exit or have a valuation that was at a number that they didn't like. What does full circle do in those situations, which it seems like they could be a big multiplier if they work with you?
Well, first of all, one of the major reasons that I do what I'm doing at my stage in life and career, and basically what I was at your stage in life and career, John, it might have been a little bit different. Okay. One of the reasons that I do what I'm doing and still doing it, because people have asked me, Michael, when are you going to retire? Okay. And my answer to all of them is I'm going to retire when I have pennies on my eyes, when I'm dead. Okay. Because what the reason one of the major reasons I'm doing what I'm doing right now, somebody told me earlier in my career, they said the first third of your career you spend learning, the second third of your career you spend earning, the final third of your career you should spend giving back. And to a large degree, that's what I get a lot of satisfaction of. It's taking someone who's struggling or not struggling, but not growing, and helping them grow their business in terms of revenue, profit, and valuation, so that it results in what it results in is a better ability for that person to provide for their family, to educate their kids, okay, to have a better lifestyle. And as you said earlier, to not have to spend as much time in the business as they had been spending in the business, because they're developing these new skills that will allow them and will facilitate the growth of their business. Um, that to a great degree is one of the things that is very important, and that is very rewarding for me, is to is realizing that what I'm doing is even making a small difference in terms of improving all those areas for folks. In terms of, as they grow, just depending upon what their intentions are. I mean, there have been some people that as they've grown, and have really not had a background in leadership skills. One of the other services I provide in my company, besides what we've discussed today, is I do a suite of leadership training for people. If somebody would like to exponentially expand and grow their company, I have taken and have helped entrepreneurs in terms of franchising their business and being able to grow through franchising their business.
Mm.
Because I started Deck the Walls with myself and with a administrative assistant, I had the opportunity and the blessing of being able to have to touch every single aspect of creating a franchise offering and expanding it. Um, so I can provide those services as well. Besides that, as opposed to just recommending that clients create joint venture relationships with folks, okay, I listen to what I tell them, and I do that with Full Circle as well. Okay, so if somebody, as they grow, I can provide some leadership training for them, great. If there are some things that they need from a standpoint of expertise in terms of organizational consulting, I have a joint venture partner that I can bring in and refer to them to help them as far as as far as the organizational, evaluating their organizational needs and be able to help them grow and expand from an organizational standpoint. The other thing I have, if somebody has a need in terms of creating a market dominating position for a new website or social media program, I have a joint venture partner that I can bring in that has that expertise to be able to do it. So I can pretty much provide not only what needs to be done and how to get it done in terms of growth, but also provide the resources as far as other partners that provide things that may not be my expertise to be able to do them and get them done.
And that's such a genius way, right? Obviously, there may be 12 steps, but you have like a really great competency for 3 to 4, right? Maybe even 6. But it sounds like you also are willing to and have that strategy of being able to bring some other experts that may have even another level, right? To bring them to the next level of those 12 steps. So what's kind of the structure of compensation? So we'll get into that, and then we'll end it with our CEO program at the end. But I'd love to know from a coaching perspective, what's your thoughts? You do the freemium on your website, then they set up a 45-minute, again, free call. You give a ton of value, up to $60,000 is one of the most successful stories that you've had of that 45-minute consultation. But then what does it look like to transition? Is it a monthly package? Do they give you a retainer and then they meet with you once a week? How does compensation look for Full Circle and how you do it?
Okay, typically, and again, I have some flexibility in how it might be structured. Okay, but typically, what I'd like to see is, and what my normal monthly fee is, again, on a 12-month engagement is $2,500 a month. Now, initially, when a client comes on, I will have one hour Zoom call each week for the first month. And then it's 2 Zoom calls a month for the other 11 months. Okay. And that's what essentially that $2,500 is. What I mentioned in terms of some flexibility is for those companies that could not afford $2,500 a month. I may negotiate that monthly fee down, but then also incorporate taking a percentage of what improvement we are able to realize in terms of another way of structuring the compensation. Okay. As far as that's concerned, the other thing that winds up happening sometimes is that in addition to I mentioned it earlier. In addition, if we find out in terms of other needs that that company has, like if they would need this leadership training suite that I have, that would be on top of whatever the monthly coaching fee is towards improvement in the 12 areas we identified. So.
Fantastic. Well, look, you've been able to do so many cool things in your life. And I love the encore stage of life, right? Soon enough, I'll be in that stage. But, it's really, I love that you do not stop. And when people ask you, well, when are you going to retire, Mike? It's not about retirement. It's about staying active. And as long as our brain can share, you've got a lot of value to bring to the marketplace. And I think it's all nice, or I mean, I think it's really interesting and cool that to be able to be still impactful, right? The marketplace has changed. Obviously, Sears and Roebuck, as an example, is not even around anymore, right? Per se, but you impacted something that now later on in different industries, you could still leave that impression and that impact yourself. Now, do you have any books or anything that I might have missed, or anything that you've developed as well beyond the obviously the great software?
Well, there is probably within the next month or two, there is going to be an ebook that I'm going to have
Okay.
available to folks. Don't want to say a whole lot about it right now, but it basically incorporates, basically talking about all the concepts of the approach that I'm taking. And in addition, educationally, it's meant to educate folks in terms of what those things are, supplemented if someone engages me with the e-learning center that I mentioned to you, that comes as part of the engagement as well. So,
Nate. Well, we end our interviews with CEO. So it's client experience, engagement, and then operational excellence. So within like 30, 60 seconds, if you take a look at it from a value proposition standpoint, full circle coaching, what is that client experience?
the client experience is essentially, I would say, discovery is the number one. That there are things that are available, again, based on the innovative approach that I take to looking at their business that they haven't even considered. Okay. Um, Engagement, from the standpoint of engagement, I have I thoroughly enjoy the interactions that I have with clients on the Zoom calls that we have as we work through the program, and as we work through the areas of improvement we've identified. You know, another thing as far as that relates to client experiences, back to client experiences from the engagement part is them seeing the results that we talked about seeing in their business. Okay, the final one, operational, I'm not sure what you
Yeah,
exactly.
operational excellence is basically, the tools that you're using right now. Obviously, you use your website as one of the tools, the consultative approach, right, with the software that you developed. So anything else that helps you manage your business to be operationally excellent from a full circle coaching experience.
Um, Basically understanding that myself, and I think this adds to it very much, John, understanding myself that even though I've had, and we've talked about all the experience I've had, okay, in terms of various areas, is that with every day, with every person I talk to, with every experience that I have, I learn more than I knew the day before. And it's keeping my mind in that mode that every one of my favorite quotes is from Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's. He said, when you're green, you're growing, and when you're ripe, you die. Okay. Just to keep yourself in the mindset that every person that you meet, every experience you have, every conversation you have is an opportunity to know more than you knew the day before. And I think that keeping in that mode improves the operational results is and experience, the client experience and engagement that clients have with me when they come on board.
Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure. I've already gained so much knowledge in the few times that we've chatted. I know that it'll continue as we are close neighbors here in the Naperville area, and we'll see each other at networking events and those types of things. But tell people how to get a hold of you, how to make sure that if they want to engage with you, and where to get that free tool initially to then prep themselves for the 45-minute call and eventual services that you do.
Okay, first of all, they can contact me. The easiest way is by phone, and my phone number is area code 630-201-8400. That's my cell phone. I will answer the call if I can. If I happen to be tied up, you will get a call back from me as soon as I'm available. I'm very conscientious about that. The other thing, people can go to my website, which is www.fullcircleconsulting, I'm sorry, www.fullcirclecoachingservices.com. Okay. And that would be my website access where the link for the free training is, and schedule an appointment if they want to do the 45-minute call. They can email me at Michael M at fullcirclecoachingservices.com.
I love it. So you've got many ways to get a hold of you. I know you're on LinkedIn, you're active there, and you're active in the Chicagoland community as well with the networking events and when people meet you. So from 0 to 10, small business. From 10 million to a billion, medium-sized business. And anyway, full circle is the way that you need to go for CEO community. If you are intrigued by this, reach out to Michael. Reach out and take a piece of that wisdom that he's had for many years in the marketplace, that he's been able to develop a lot of value, and he's doing some stuff that is really kind of different in the coaching space, and allows him to be a new component for you to be able to use to help your own business. So, and by the way, subscribe to the channel. I don't say it enough. We got to get these subscriber base going and growing, so that we can bring more people like Michael Maziarek, right, to the world, and so that people know him, right? He's done so many great things, and that's one of the visions of Go for CEO, is bringing people like yourself onto the channel so that it becomes evergreen marketing in the future, and people run into and take advantage. Go to fullcirclecoachingservices.com. Michael, thank you so much for being on the Go for CEO channel.
Thank you, John. I appreciate the opportunity.